Good evening, everybody. And I've got John Yates, who you all know. I've got Simon Bean, who you all know. And if you're new to the channel, well, you get who Simon and John are as we go along. John's been involved in unionist politics for over 30 years, and Simon has been involved in fighting for his country since he was 16, I think. And 18. Sorry, 18. I apologize. 18. And John's been involved in defending his country through politics since he was probably 6 months old. so that means he's been doing it for 21 years. Anyway, you're all very welcome. Serious subject tonight. What we want to do is really look at the difference between Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the Black Lives Matter movement, because the way the media are portraying this movement, you would think that this was a continuation of what Dr. Martin Luther King stood for, when in reality, it is the complete opposite of what Dr. Martin Luther King stood for. Now, I'm going to play a video here, so I need you all to give me a thumbs up so I know you can hear it okay. It's a very famous speech that that Martin Luther King made in the early 60s in Washington, D.C. under the statue of Abraham Lincoln. And it's obviously the I Have a Dream speech. So let's just get this playing now, and then we'll play something.
Is there any sound on there, Richard?
Okay, let's just see. Can everyone hear that okay? Can you just give me a thumbs up, guys, if you can actually hear that audio on that? Can everyone hear that okay? Could you not hear it there, Simon? No?
No.
You can hear it either, John? No audio. Okay, guys, give me 2 seconds. There should have been audio on that because I hit the audio button, but we'll try it again. Just bear with me 2 ticks. Okay, let's do it again. So it's never like this on Newsnight, is it?
No, but that's the BBC, mate. That's biased.
Exactly. I was just going to say this is far better than Newsnight. Okay, let's try this again, guys. Okay, here we go. Share screen. Can everyone see it on the screen? Just give me a thumbs up so I know you can see it. And we'll pull it back just a little bit.
Monday.
That's better, yeah.
Cool.
Nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream.
So we all get the picture there with Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream. I want to play another video now, and I just want you to think about the difference between the rhetoric of these two men. So that first video, Martin Luther King Jr., really, I think the reality is about Martin Luther King Jr. He kind of saved America probably from a racial war in the 1960s without a shadow of a doubt, because he believed in peaceful protest. He believed in equality, genuine equality. He wasn't a black supremacist. In fact, he fought against black supremacy. But let's just listen to Anthony Joshua and see what Anthony Joshua's got to say. And if you haven't heard this, you will be shocked. Better put the audio on this one.
United in non-violent demonstrations, show them where it hurts. Abstain from spending your money in their shops and in economies and invest in black-owned businesses. And that's for all communities. If you want to uplift yourself, invest in your own businesses. We have to engage with the youth. I completely agree with that. And put an end to black youth gang culture. I'm going to be real with you about gang culture. I'm down to ride 100%. But what you have to realize is done. It is done. Trust me. Unless you want to be sitting in jail, spending years upon years of your only life that you have, thinking about, yeah, they can lock the locks, but they can't stop the clocks. That's all done because there's too much cameras, too much intelligence. All the OGs that I know are telling me, bro, it's finished. It's finished. Gang life is finished. And that's what we're saying. I know that I'm not promoting no gangster business. I'm a legit, straightforward.
Okay, guys. So there we have it. Anthony Joshua is calling for a boycott of white businesses, whereas Martin Luther King Jr. is calling for harmony between the races. And I think what we've got to do, and that's what I want to talk about tonight, we've got to call out this organization called Black Lives Matter for what it is. It is basically, and this is probably going to get me into all sorts of trouble with YouTube, but it is basically a black supremacist Marxist organization that wants to abolish the police, that also wants to abolish the nuclear family. And one of the interesting things, and this is where I think they're going to come really unstuck with the black community, because a lot of people in the black community, from whatever religious background they're coming from, whether they're Christian or Muslim, believe in the traditional family and believe in conservative values. So what do we think, guys? What do we do about Black Lives Matter? How do we communicate this? Because obviously the media have bought into it, even the Premier League have bought into it. What's the answer to Black Lives Matter?
Abolish it. Because at the end of the day, Black Lives Matter has been, we already know it's a private organization. We know that George Soros and various other people are behind it. We know that it's also indirectly funding terror because it's backed 100% by Hamas. Hamas is part of the Islamic State. And a lot of the issues that are going on, not just in the UK, but going out throughout worldwide now, were practiced during the Syrian campaign. So now that they've perfected those, if you like, how can I call it? It's a form of hybrid warfare, and I did bring it up on a live yesterday, and no doubt I'll bring it up in this a bit later on. But it's irregular warfare. So it's using an organization called Black Lives Matter to hide the fact that other issues are afoot. So they're using Black Lives Matter to create divide, to create public disorder, if you like, similar to the way public disorder broke out in Northern Ireland at the late 60s and through into the 70s.
I think that's absolutely right, John. Simon, because when I'm looking at this, it's the seeds are there. That's exactly the same seeds. One community saying we're being downtrodden, we're being oppressed, and the frightening thing is, I'm going to play another little clip here. Now, this is from the States, but the sentiments are exactly the same in the UK. And when I heard this earlier on today, I just thought, well, that's exactly what happened with the IRA. So I'll just play this here now. So just bear with me.
Prosecute the police! No peace! Eradicate the police! No justice, no peace! No justice!
So basically, there you have it. You've got Black Lives Matter activists basically calling to kill the police in America. And that's exactly what happened in Northern Ireland. You know, if you look at what happened in Londonderry and then in Belfast in 1968, 69, it's exactly the same sentiment. And what really worries me, and I mean, I had a lad on the feed on Monday who was absolutely fantastic and knew all the ins and outs of the formation of Black Lives Matter and where it came from and so on and so forth. But he said he doesn't think there'll be a race war. I'm not convinced. I think that's what these people are trying to do, and we've got to, you know, stretch every sinew at the minute to reach out to people, black people, to do everything that we can to prevent that from happening, because I don't believe the majority of people want a race war, but I also don't believe that the majority of Roman Catholic people or Protestant people in Northern Ireland in the late 1960s saw a 40-year conflict coming, or wanted a 40-year conflict when thousands of people were murdered and killed. So we've got to do what we can to be like Martin Luther King Jr. and not be like Jerry Adams or Martin McGuinness or Malcolm X, who were militarists and wanted to have a military solution. And the other thing is that is the ideology of Islamists, and obviously we know Islamists are involved in this, that they will use force to achieve their aims. And it's also the ideology of Marxists, you know, which is what the IRA were, that they were a Marxist and communist organization. So my question is, we're not getting any airtime. Black Lives Matter have been given a completely free rein. They've been completely unchallenged on their ideology. How can we get across to the public in general what Black Lives Matter is really about? Because anybody that speaks out against them loses the job, as Nigel Farage and several other journalists have found out. What do we do? How can we do this?
Look, I'm just looking at their website right now, and just a few moments of a cursory glance here, and we can really identify where this organization is coming from and who's driving it. And I'm just going to read a little caption here, and it's just a very, very small piece into their website. And it says that we are a collective of liberators who believe in an inclusive and spacious movement. We also believe that in order to win and bring us as many people with us along the way, we must move beyond narrow nationalism. I just need to stop there. We must move beyond narrow nationalism. Now, there's a couple of ironies in this here, because I can identify straight away. I mean, I remember I told you about a professor attached to the George Mitchell Institute for Global Peace, who told me that they don't subscribe to narrow notions like Britain for the British, or Ireland for the Irish, or the UK or the United States for the Americans. And he went on to say that they didn't subscribe to narrow nationalism. Exactly the same words. So by these words, I can tell who's driving this here. And whenever I look on down the list here, it says here that we are working for a world where Black lives are no longer systematically targeted for demise. Systematically. Who's heard that word systematically on all your BBC radio channels and your BBC television channels over the last few days? Here in Northern Ireland, there's a show, it's called The Nolan Show. And for the last 3 mornings, I don't know how many times I've heard this, that black people are systematically targeted because they're black. Systematic racism that they're saying. And you know, I can stand here, I mean, I can tell people, and a lot of people knows my associations with a lot of black people from Africa, and not once ever have I ever been around with any black person that I've seen systematic racism here in Northern Ireland. And the irony in all of this here is two things, is that those who would promote peace in order to get a foothold in different countries, this global peace operation, George Mitchell Institute, and all the conglomerate that surrounds it, like Bill Clinton, like Barack Obama, like Alistair Campbell, like Tony Blair, like Jonathan Powell, and all of those people, you know, these people are running around the world. On one moment, they're promoting peace, and then on the next moment, what are they doing? They're stirring up racial tensions for their own ends. So, look, these people are vile excuses for human beings. And I have to say that we need to work smart with these people. And Richard, I've watched the live feeds over the last couple of days, and I have to say, you've been doing a sterling job in terms of, you know, bringing people together from all ethnicities. And also the people that was on and the people that was talking. I mean, there was one man who, well, I think he originally came, he was a member of the EDL or whatever, way back. But I mean, that man, what's he saying? He's saying that I want to go into, the black communities within the United Kingdom. I want to go to Brixton, and I want to talk to people in black community leadership to really impress upon them that look, we're all going to be stirred up against each other. And here in Northern Ireland, I mean, we've seen it happen so many times before. And I take my hat off to you for what you've been doing. And I have to say is that these people are so predictable that you can nearly tell what their next move is going to be. So really and truly, what we need to do is that we need to. There's a church in Dublin, and they call it All Nations Church. And there's a little pastor in that church, and he's an Irishman, and he's a white Irishman. And in Dublin, it's very hard to be a Christian or to have anything to do with religion. But this man has surrounded himself with multiculturalism. And what do I mean? People that want to be Irish. They want to blend in. They want to contribute to the Irish state. And they only want to live there, and they only want to get on with their lives. And there's many of those people right across the United Kingdom, right across in Northern Ireland here. There's those type of people. And we have to reach out to those people, because I see those radio stations which are literally promoting racial tensions is the reality, like your white privileged male and so on. This is the sort of language that they're using. But what we need to do is that we need the people here that are coloured people within the UK to go and tackle those people and go toe to toe with that mainstream media, because it would soon stop whenever their arguments are dismantled in that way.
Exactly, and this is the tragedy of it. I mean, when I talk like I'm talking, when I call out the organization Black Lives Matter, and I must stress this, and I think we've all got to stress this: Black lives do matter, and all color lives matter. So it's not just black lives, all lives matter, and that's what we've been saying. There's one race, it's the human race, and different people have different skin pigmentation. So to actually just say Black Lives Matter in itself is intensely racist. Now, for me to say that under this new dispensation and this new definition of racism, a white man cannot call out anybody else of any other color on racism. That's what they will tell you. That's what they will tell you, which to me is in itself completely racist. This is the dystopian sort of world, this Alice in Wonderland world that we're living in. And this is an extremely dangerous moment in British history. And the best way that we can resolve this is by reaching out. Now, Luke,
has this been written into law yet, Richard? Do we know?
No, I mean definitions. The definitions of, I mean, they tried to get a definition of Islamophobia into law, and they completely came unstuck.
They failed miserably.
They failed miserably. And let's be fair, thanks to Theresa May didn't do much right, but she got that right because she slapped them down on that. And the big worry is obviously if we ever get a Labour government again. I mean, the Tories are bad enough, but the Labour Party will be far worse. But I think we're in a very, very dangerous period, because not everybody has access to social media. A lot of people do, but a lot of people still don't use social media, so they're not seeing these videos, they're not seeing what we're talking about. So we've got to find a way, and I'll use a military term, we've got to have a force multiplier that will basically get our message to the widest possible spectrum. And guys, if you're watching this tonight, and it's not for me to be a self-publicist, because I'll be honest with you, I'd rather just go swimming every day for a few hours than do this sort of stuff. I'm doing it because I have to do it, because our country's at stake. Like and share these videos with as many people as you can, of different backgrounds, different political persuasions. There's no point in us just being in a little echo chamber and talking to each other. Please get these videos to your left-wing, liberal, uninterested friends. Get them to your black friends, your Asian friends, your Muslim friends, your Christian friends, because this message needs to go out that people in the UK have got to start coming together. And Simon, you said it the other day, you said we've got to come together irrespective of creed, color, background, religion, sexuality, whatever it is, it doesn't matter, because there's a lot at stake here. We can have our, as John always says, contentions, and we can discuss those peacefully, but We're in a melting pot at the minute, and the mainstream media, people like Piers Morgan, people like Emily Maitlis, are deliberately stirring this up and making a problem where there isn't a problem. And we've got to find ways of challenging them and going after them. And just one point,
like the mainstream. Sorry, Richard. The mainstream media are the ones that are stirring all this up, and they're using psyops, psychological operations, by suggesting to the population that there is an issue between blacks and whites. And in the same way that when you go into a supermarket, they use labeling on products to make you buy certain things. The music that's pumped out through that supermarket changes something in the synapses in your brains and makes you go down aisles and spend money on stuff that you don't really want. And that's been going on for years and years and years. And it's all down to power of suggestion. And if you say something often enough to a child will believe it. That's how a child learns. When you say that to an adult, there's always that little bit of cynicism. But if you get enough adults to believe it and they start spreading it as well, it ends up this massive tsunami. And in a very short period of time, like we've seen with this, over what, 2.5 weeks, something like that, it spread over the entire Western hemisphere of the globe. And anybody that's not awake to the various agendas that have been online now for quite some time, and you could go back, say, to George Orwell's 1984 to sort of get a bit of an idea about what I mean there. Anybody that's not awake to these agendas will be suckered in, and it tends to be the younger people, and it tends to be the older people within society that are suckered in, and the people like me and yourselves who are sort of stuck in the middle somewhere tend to maintain our cynicism and see it for what it is. I probably haven't explained that too well.
No, you did.
I probably went off on a couple of tangents, but I think that's where it sort of...
That was bang. Myself and John spoke about this on the first live feed that we did on this sort of series of live feeds a few weeks ago. John said exactly the same thing, and basically what it's based on. There's a book by an academic called Robert Cialdini called Persuasion or Persuasion. There's two books, one called Persuasion, one called Persuasion, and it's about how to brainwash populations. A lot of salespeople use exactly the same things that you're using. It's things like authority. I can't remember them all, but there's a whole list of basically, these principles that are used, and the state is using them. They used it in COVID-19, and now the state and the mainstream media are doing exactly the same thing. And I want to say absolutely categorically, I do not believe for 1 minute that there is widespread systemic racism in the United Kingdom. I think that is a lie. It's a lie that's actually, and what it's doing, and this is how cynical these people are. What it is actually doing is turning people into racists, because people, and that's why I'm saying we have to reach out into the black community. And like Luke said on Monday, there isn't actually a monolithic black community. The black community is very diverse. It's very dispersed. It is not like the Muslim community is very monolithic, but the black community isn't like that. But what's happening with this? It is actually becoming more and more polarized, and they are pushing a divide that didn't exist until this guy in America very, very tragically got murdered by that, or is allegedly murdered by that police officer. And that's another thing. I mean, this thing that happened with George Floyd, it would appear to be murder, but the man who did it has not been convicted of any crime yet. He's on remand. And again, talk about trial by media. I mean, it's that's another issue. But so what we've got to do is we've got to speak the truth. And we've got to tell the truth about what's going on, but do it in a way that is completely honest to our black friends and neighbors, but does not in any way insult them or offend them. If they're reasonable, like-minded people. They shouldn't be upset or offended like Luke wasn't, and the other people I've had on in the past few days. But we do have to, to me, we have to build those bridges, because we're in a very dangerous situation, and I don't want to see this country go through Northern Ireland on steroids.
King John put up a little comment there. It's annoying because I can't sort of comment on the comments. Do you have to buy into this or something to do that? But King John put up a little thing on there saying about Agenda 30.
Yeah, I saw that.
Now, Agenda 30. Am I wrong in Agenda 30 is about population control, isn't it?
I honestly don't know. I've heard of it, but I don't know.
Agenda 21, which leads to Agenda 2030. The Agenda 21 is all about sustainable growth, sustainable populations, and so on. Yeah.
So it's about culling the human race, basically, isn't it?
Basically, essentially, it is. Yeah.
So you could say that, and I'll probably be shot by many that don't believe in conspiracy theories, but you could say that Agenda 21, part of Agenda 21 was to have a pandemic. The pandemic hasn't had the desired effect that they thought it was going to have. So you move to Plan B, and Plan B is to create divide, disruption, and anarchy throughout the Western world through race. Yeah. And that will ultimately lead to civil war or certainly domestic unrest, where people will start paying the ultimate price, and that will gain the losses that they've sustained in the pandemic not being a great pandemic. So that by 2030 their numbers are down to a desirable sort of level, and then they can bring other things to speed that up. Would I be wrong in saying that, do you think? Or
I think that's accurate, John. I think that's a very accurate summing up of what's actually happening here. I'm going to play another video here because this is a lady. I mean, this lady I'm going to play. Man, she's a charmer. If you haven't seen this lady before, you're going to absolutely be delighted with this individual. I am being a little bit sarcastic here. This is a lady called Afua Hirsch, and I'm going to play the video, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about who this lady is and what she actually stands for. So just stand by while we get this worked out. So let's have a little listen to Afua Hirsch. If anyone knows it, you'll know exactly where I'm going with this.
Raise next. All over the world, statues are coming down. In just the last couple of weeks, New York has removed from Central Park the statue of a doctor who tortured enslaved Black women. India has brought down Lenin, and Canadians have defaced statues of Queen Victoria. In Britain, Bristol has agreed to rename its famous music hall, removing the name of Edward Colston, one of the nation's most prolific slave traders. Now it's time to take a long, hard look at other hugely problematic figures we continue to glorify, such as Horatio Nelson, Cecil Rhodes, and yes, Winston Churchill.
I mean, to me, that is absolutely incredible that she's basically classing Winston Churchill and Nelson as controversial figures. Now, that woman, I'll just tell you who that woman is. That woman was voted the most influential Afro-Caribbean woman 2020. She is a media star. The lovies and the liberal elite love her. She's on every single show. She's Piers Morgan's buddy. She's Nick Ferrari's buddy on Sky TV. They all have a great laugh at pulling down statues of Winston Churchill. And the ironic thing about this is this woman hates Britain. Don't be under any illusion. She pretends she doesn't, but she hates Britain and she hates everything Britain stands for. She goes back and she forensically analyzes every single mistake that Britain's made throughout history. But this woman is a product of the British elite. She was educated in a private school. She went to Oxford University. Her father was part of the colonial setup. Sorry, her grandfather was part of the colonial setup in Ghana. Her her grandfather or a great uncle is a top scientist. So she is part of the elite. And yet she would tell us that we have white privilege. So because she's got a slightly different skin pigmentation, she's telling us that we have white privilege. Now, I don't know about you guys. Every single thing I've ever earned has been with literally the sweat and blood of my brow and my body. And I'm sure, well, I know for a fact you guys are exactly the same. Yeah. So, you know, when we've got people like whatever her name is, I can't even remember her name now, Afua or whatever her name is, running along telling everybody that how racist we are and what a deplorable country it is, and we've got to rip down the statues of Winston Churchill, and she has been giving unlimited free airtime. How the hell do we fight against that? What can we do?
Yeah. Before we get on to that, I was wanting to read another little piece here, and it was just based on what you had said there, Simon, when we're talking about Agenda 21, and it brought back memories of the thing called the UN Migration Compact, or the UN Migration Pact, just a couple of years ago, 2018, from my recollection. So I'm reading here from the UN.org, and it says here, for the first time ever, United Nations member states have agreed on all-encompassing global compact to better manage international migration, address its challenges, strengthen migrant rights, and contribute to sustainable development. And I can remember talking to Anne-Marie Waters back just a few years ago. I think it was in the December time. I think we all arrived in at a Brexit rally, I think on the 12th of December in 2018. And I spoke to Anne-Marie Waters the day previous as we were headed there. And we were talking about how in this UN Migration Pact, it was given migrants or people from right across the world, it was given them the absolute right to come and settle in a country as a human right. And let's remember that, as a human right. And I remember at the time, whenever they were signing this pact, you know, the various countries, what they had said is, well, okay, it's in there, but, you know, it's not going to be acted upon. Now, was it that the population perhaps rose up against this and it wasn't going to be acceptable when it was floated in the public domain? So I look at this whole Black Lives Matter scenario as it's developing, and how that they're hyping up this racial, what am I going to say, that the racism, the non-racism that they're hyping up right now. And you have to look at it, you have to say, what are they trying to do? Are they trying to cause racial tensions? Yes, they are, but why are they trying to do it? Are they going to try to follow up here with some draconian laws? Are they going to try to use the BBC, the radio stations, and the media to hype up the public in order that they can say, yes, there is racial tensions here, and there is racism, and we really need, there's institutionalized racism, and we really need to ensure that there's laws in place to ensure that nobody's discriminated against? Meanwhile, what they do is that they zip us up, they remove our freedom of speech and freedom of expression on these subjects, and then we won't be able to criticize or comment on or point out when, let's say that when our country is about to be flooded with migrants from right across the world, as they say in here, as a human right. So yeah, these people, I mean, there's always a reason why they do things. And this also could be part of it. This could be part of their Agenda 21. And it was just those words, that the Agenda 21 was all about having a sustainable population and a sustainable future. And then here we are in this UN Migration Pact that I've just read from. We're finding it's all about sustainability. These words, these key words, you'll find them across all these documents, you know. So we've got to sort of consider the reason why things are being done.
And of course, the other problem that we've got, and with every, you know, there's always an equal and opposite reaction to these things. And you know, we had an individual at the march on Saturday wearing a White Lives Matter T-shirt. Now, to me, that is just as bad as wearing a Black Lives Matter T-shirt. It's exactly the same race baiting. It's going down exactly the same road. And what that does, it divides us on the grounds of skin pigmentation. Now, it's bad enough that the country's getting flooded with migrants who have now. Let's be honest. Some of them come to the country, they integrate, and they do fantastically well, and they become great patriots. Let's be honest about that. A great number of them, but the reality is the more people that come into the country, the more chance they have of going into little ghettos, getting involved in criminality, and not contributing to the state and to the society. So not only have we got the problem of mass unchecked migration, now we have a problem of mass unchecked migration. Added into that, the divisive politics of identity, where the white people only want to stay with the white people and the black people only want to stay with the black people. Now, to me, this is a recipe for disaster that our children and our grandchildren will reap the whirlwind of, unless we can have, and I believe in full integration. I believe that community should integrate. And again, the statistics of black and Afro-Caribbean people who marry white girls and white girls who marry gentlemen from that background is huge, because there has been proper integration. And culturally and ideologically, we are not very different from our Christian friends from Nigeria, Cameroon, Sierra Leone, the West Indies. We all enjoy the same things. And what this is doing, and I'm really angry with people like Raheem Sterling and Anthony Joshua and who's the fellow that drives the racing car? It drives one of Adolf Hitler's racing cars. What's his name? Lewis Hamilton, because they have bought into this, you know, and it's absolutely appalling what's happening. And I want to play another video clip here, because again, my blood's boiling about this, so I want to get it out my system, guys. I just want to get this, get this out there, and and I'm not doing this to incite anything. I'm just doing this just to show you what's going on here. So let's play another video here. I just want to play this here. So here we go. Now there's no sound on this, so we can just talk over it, guys. But I mean, that to me, that reminded me of when ISIS stormed one of the Shia army camps, and that's what they made the Shia soldiers do: bow the knee and then bow the head before they cut their throats or shot them in the back of the head. That's what that reminds me of. That is submission. That is not equality. That is superiority. That whole idea of taking the knee, I find absolutely appalling. And every one of those, in my opinion, every one of those police officers should be fired for doing that. For bowing the knee on the grounds of race or religion or anything. It is absolutely unacceptable. It's disgusting. And where is the pride in those men? Yeah. Where is the pride in those men?
I was chatting on the phone to a reasonably high-level police officer this morning, who is actually assisting me on some research, which I should be able to bang out in a live tomorrow, which will stir things right up again. And then I'm doing another one on Friday, which will stir things even further. Now, they turned around and said, or this officer that I spoke to this morning said that everything in the police service at the moment is controlled from above. So when you've got the young police officers on the ground there, the boys and the girls, who should be receiving respect from everybody because they are the ones that uphold the law on the front line, are being told to turn a blind eye to certain things, but pay particular attention to other things if those other things benefit the people that are involved in the movement of Black Lives Matter. And so that involves taking the knee, etc. Now, it was alluded to that officers have refused to go on duty during these protests, if you want to call them that, because of they're of a certain age, certain experience, where they're not going to, and taking the knee is surrender at the end of the day, they're not going to surrender to the thugs on the ground, is how it was put to me. Now, this is the third time this has been confirmed to me by fairly senior police officers throughout the country. And it turns out nowadays that most of the police officers that are at a very high level are direct entry police officers. So they have no experience of policing on the ground. They could be managing director of Lidl's today. They could apply for a policing job tomorrow. And because they've got the correct schooling, they go straight into that high up position, don the uniform with very minimal training, and are then given direction, not very good direction in lots of cases, to the young boys and girls that are trying to police on the ground. And of course, where the police on the ground once would do 3 or 4 months training and then do on-the-job training and regular checks for a probationary period of around about 2, maybe 3 years, depending on the force, that seems to have all gone out the window. So it's now just sort of learn enough so that you can be chucked on the street after 10 weeks. So they've become sort of 10-week wonders, if you like, which is the way the military went for a while. And expect them to uphold the law as if they, had been on all sorts of training courses over a period of 5 or 6 years, and they had 15 or 20 years worth of experience. Well, that's clearly not the case now. And the minute they speak out, they're sacked.
Absolutely.
So, that you have to feel sorry for them in a way, and I'm a big softy at heart, and I really do feel for these young officers on the ground. And I think somewhere along the line, the officers that are in the middle somewhere, the ones that are old school, done a good bit of service, went through the entry procedures in the old school way, are the ones that need to nurture these young ones and protect them from the ones higher up that are direct entry and haven't got much of a clue. A bit like senior NCOs in the military look after the junior soldiers in the military and give the higher officers guidance. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, that's that. But again, the point on the military side of it as well, Simon, is I was talking to a retired police officer who we both know last week, and he told me if you're ex-military, they don't let you in now. They don't want ex-soldiers in the police.
No, because we won't be surrendering on the street on our knees.
Yeah.
And we're so sort of fired up and in a way a bit fooked up in our heads that we're liable to just punch people when they come up to it. Oi, get on your knees, whack. That's dealt with. Really old school.
Exactly.
And they don't want that. They don't want that in the police because they want the softly.
Unless you're a Tommy Robinson supporter, and then they'll beat you with batons until the hands get sore. I mean,
absolutely.
This is the hypocrisy of it.
It is
John,
very, and it was proved. Sorry, John. Just before you jump in, I just want to get this off my chest. It was proved on Saturday to a large degree when the police were facing off the veterans, and this was sort of confirmed to me this morning that if they face off the veterans, they can be seen to be doing their job. But they're facing off the softer option because they know the veterans aren't going to retaliate because the veterans have a certain amount of respect for the authority. So it makes it easier for them to face off the vets than it does to do a 180 and face off the BLM supporters. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Because it makes their job easier and there's less risk of them being harmed in the course of their duty.
The path.
Sorry, John.
I mean, I know that I'm going to tie something in that we've all, so it's sort of precious to all our hearts here. And whenever you're speaking there, Simon, I couldn't help but smirk. And I'll tell you why. Is that, I mean, I can think who's heard of the term appeasement process?
Yeah. And
we all know where that come from. And whenever you look at it, that began in Northern Ireland many years ago. And I mean, we've seen the Good Friday Agreement as an appeasement process. And our police service, because this is along the same line, and I'm going to explain to you in a nutshell why it is that it's happening. But a police service is set up to be fair, to be impartial, to be free from partisan political control, to be capable of gaining and maintaining the respect of the entire community. Now, you tell me that police force, and I sit and laugh about it, but you tell me that that's going to gain the respect and gain and maintain the respect of the entire community, because it's not. And in terms of appeasement process, you see, I mean, these people, they're about appeasing anybody that wants to subscribe to the globalization. And if anything's on the side of globalization, they're the ones that get appeased. And we learned this to your cost in Northern Ireland, that, you know, British people in Northern Ireland are patriotically proud of who they are. And in fact, some people say that, you know, the most patriotically proud part of the entire United Kingdom. And time again has the police force stood against the loyalist people, the unionist people, the British people in Northern Ireland. And again, I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, but I can remember Ronnie Flanagan, the then chief constable. Yeah. He said that the lesser of two evils was to stand against the loyalists, was the reality. Just like what you said there, Simon. Because why? Yeah. Because we don't want to be fighting with the state. We don't want to be taking, you know, our police service down. We want our police service to be, you know, implementing law and order. And there's the difference, you know. But literally, it's an appeasement process. That's what it is.
Having said that, John, I'm going to get myself into all sorts of trouble for saying this. But when a loyalist named Billy Wright turned up at Drumcree with a muck spreader full of potentially napalm, they changed their tune pretty quickly then, and the march was unceremoniously forced down the road. And the fact there was 50,000 loyalists there. So the problem that we've got, and this is where what we have in the UK is policing by consent. And if they lose the consent of the population, they know that the game's up and they cannot police correctly anymore. And the problem that we've got in the UK, and the reason I mentioned Drumcree, it wasn't just to make a flippant comment. By the way, that's true. But the reason that march that year was forced down the road, down the Garvaki Road, was because the parachute regiment, and Simon will bear this out as an ex para, the parachute regiment CO went to the chief constable, and the chief constable said to the parachute regiment CO, "Can you stop this march going down the road?" And the para CO said, "Yes, absolutely. Anything's possible. We're the parachute regiment. How many body bags do you have? I'll need at least 450. That's what he said. That's what the para CO said to the Hugh Ansley, who was then the chief of police in Northern Ireland, who actually came from the Met. So there's a surprise. And Hugh Ansley.
I'm only a plastic para, by the way, though, because I was still cat badged RCT.
Oh no, yeah, but you did P company though, Simon. You did P company, mate. You did P company. That's
and you know, at the end of the day, you know, soldiers are trained to be tough, and every soldier, irrespective of cat badge, goes through a certain amount of basic training, and that basic training is pretty much the same. And then you do your specialist training that applies to each of your badges. So if you're going to be a driver like I was predominantly, you go and do all your driver training, and then you learn transport management and you learn logistics and all that sort of stuff. And as your experience grows, you do more and more courses until you become an expert, and then they kick you out. So and then once, you know, and when it comes to sort of people like the parachute regiment, you know, they do a bit of basic training, then they do advanced soldier training, they do P company, they do the jumps courses, etc., etc. When they come out of that, so, you know, let's say a year's worth of training, they're pretty tough and they're fired up. And when they're put in a situation where they can put all that training to good use, they want to do that. And so when that commander turned around and said, "Yeah, how many body bags have you got?" That's really the right thing to say, because absolutely, soldiers are trained to fight and protect the people that need to protect. They're not trained to become policemen or policewomen, patrolling streets, looking after issues that the civilian police are trained to do. Hence why the army went to Northern Ireland in the first place, which was really to look after the Catholic community because they thought they were being unfairly treated by the Protestant community and the authorities, and then it sort of lost its way a little bit, and suddenly it was just there mainly in support of the RUC.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting analogy there, Simon, as well, because the reality is with the army going into Northern Ireland, and this is where the British state, I think sometimes we credit the British state with being a lot cleverer than it is. I think to a great extent, the actual governments of the day are pretty clueless, and the civil service are the ones who really run the show. We were talking about that with the deep state before we came on air. But when the British Army came to Northern Ireland, they didn't expect the Catholic community to turn on them with the viciousness that they did in 69, 70. We think about Sergeant Mick Willits, who was killed protecting a Catholic family on the Springfield Road, and scores of other soldiers who were doing very heroic things. Of course, that's completely airbrushed out of Northern Ireland's history. But I tell you who was telling them that was going to happen. The RUC were telling the army that the Republicans were going to turn on them. Ian Paisley was telling the British government and the army that this was a Republican plot and the Republicans were going to turn them. Many loyalists were telling the British army and the British government that this was going to happen. And the British government, in its arrogance and its sort of imperialistic stance, said, we know better than you guys. We know how to do this. And of course they didn't. And, another one of the reasons that this continued on for many, many years. But the reality is we've got a similar situation now. What we're doing is we're doing what the loyalists did in the unionists did in the 1960s and early 1970s, and warning the British state that this group called Black Lives Matter is wanting to create a race war. It's not that Black Lives Matter has been hijacked. Black Lives Matter is the bad cop. Black Lives Matter is the great Satan. It is there to destroy the black community. I mean, let's be honest. Because if they get their aim and they get what they want and manage to defund the police, can you imagine what would happen if the police were defunded in Hackney? And there was no police force in Hackney? Who's going to run the show? Who would you rather have, the Metropolitan Police or the Yardies? It's as simple as that, really, isn't it? And of course, that's the cleverness. That's the cleverness of this movement, Black Lives Matter. And that's why the gangs are buying into this, is because they're going, if we can get rid of the police, we've got free reign. This is exactly what the IRA did in the 1970s with so-called free dairy and the no-go areas in Belfast, which again were allowed to be created by the British state. So I think we've got to draw these parallels with Northern Ireland. I'm sure a lot of our viewers are going, why are you talking about Northern Ireland all the time? Well, Baba Yaga has just put it up on the screen. Northern Ireland was a training ground for the globalists and for the deep state. And I don't believe that this, just want to put this up here. This guy's lost me. Yes, Drottenwell in Ballykenny, lest we forget. And how can anybody forget what happened in Drottenwell, and the fact that soldiers and women were blown up by the INLA bomb planted, I believe, by Dominic McGlinchey, the butcher of Balaki. And well, at least he got his just desserts eventually. But anyway, so we move on because I don't want to go down that.
I don't know how
it upsets me when we start talking about those things.
Yeah, don't talk about it. It's got to be remembered, though, Richard. It's got to be remembered because it's important. It can't be brushed under the carpet. Yeah, but try not to dwell on it because it upsets people. President Trump, is this true? Because somebody told me it today, but I've been flat out doing other stuff and I don't know exactly where the info's come from. But President Trump apparently has announced today that he's rolling the military out to deal with the issues in
Seattle,
in the US, the Black Lives Matter, because the police are becoming overwhelmed. And because 3 were poisoned at a milkshake stall or something yesterday, the Milk Shack or something, and there was a product added to the milk shake that made them poorly. They turned around and said that it was something to do with the filtration or something, and that the machine hadn't been cleaned out properly or hadn't been rinsed out after its cleaning. But there was 47 other people or something that drank out the same machine, and they're perfectly fine. So he's mobilising his military. But I don't know where that's written because I haven't had a chance to research it. I just wondered if anybody else had heard.
Well, Crypto Chris has just put the bleach was added to the
bleach
to milkshakes, and I mean I think there's another and when you think about that, Simon and John, there are parallels here with Northern Ireland, because if he's talking about calling the army out because the police can't cope, because the police is becoming overwhelmed by this disorder, it's exactly what happened in 1968 when the army was brought onto the streets. The RUC up in Londonderry was completely exhausted. They were dealing with major civil unrest in Belfast, and the army was the last resort. So if you're calling the army out onto the streets, he's not going to do that lightly. But the other problem we've got with Trump, I think he's made a bit of a mistake here, where he's now, I don't know if he's signed an executive order, but he has banned the chokehold. Now, yes, people die when they're put in chokeholds, but they also die when they get shot or when they get hit with batons. So to take that away from police officers when it's part of their training to actually get people in a chokehold to restrain them, I think is quite a serious situation if he's not putting some other restraint in its place. And again, you know, this is very similar to what happened in Northern Ireland when they disarmed the police in 1970, I think it was. So yeah, I mean, we're in big trouble. Somebody asked, what do we do? And I think all we can do as civilians, and people with a small platform, is look at it and say, who do you want? And say this to the black, and we've got to challenge people in the black community, and I want to see leadership who will stand up. And we've seen it on these channels. We've seen it with Luke. We've seen it with other people that have come on channel, and they have stood up and they have taken a stand against this organization called Black Lives Matter and said they do not represent us. But we need to see that on a very, very wide scale before this gets out of hand. And we don't need a Nelson Mandela. We certainly don't need a Jerry Adams or a Martin McGuinness. What we need in the black community now is a Martin Luther King Jr. for the 21st century. And we need one very, very quickly in the UK. And that's...
There apparently, I don't know if it... Sorry, Richard, cutting you off your flow. There was apparently a poll yesterday in London that people were asked to sign out in the street. And the Lord Viscount Rodri St. David, who I was chatting to yesterday, did that poll, and it was basically just two questions. And I think it came up through social media, and you didn't know what the result was until the usual sort of poll. You didn't know what the result was until you'd made your choice. And then it told you whether you were on the yes or the no sort of side as a percentage. Apparently, 94% of those that reacted to the poll, and the poll basically said, do you class the United Kingdom as a racist nation? 96% of the population that reacted said no.
Good.
And only 6% said, yes, it's inherently racist. So straight away, just on that simple poll, now I don't know how many, it could have been 4 people did it for all I know, but out of that simple poll, it would show that the majority of the people still have their head screwed on. They know that they're being played. They know that they're being played probably by the government and aided by the mainstream media. And this is where it sort of comes in, and I sort of alluded to it on my personal live on Monday. The government are afraid of its own military, and it's particularly afraid of its retired military, i.e. the veterans. So my personal belief, and this is where I'm going to go a stage further tomorrow on a personal live, and then another personal live probably on Friday. my personal feeling is that we need to get veterans out and about, or veterans to do some sort of, even if it's just make a noise, call it a poll, call it what you like. You know, I'm putting in a bit of misinformation here at the moment because the government use that to great effect, so I'm using it now. But if you can get enough, if you can get 1 million plus people all to move forward one step at the same time, you'll create such a political earthquake that Parliament building will rock. And that will also rock the shadow government that's probably stood behind them pulling their strings. So if we can do that, I think we'll get enough backing from the general population, because we know from yesterday's poll that the population is 90-odd% non-racist, or believe the country to be 98% or 90-odd% non-racist. And that straight away, if we can get the government and the mainstream media to go on a back foot and persuade the mainstream media to start reporting up-to-date, truthful news that the people of this good land want to listen to, and not the fake bullshit that they put out because it fits the government's narrative, I think we'll go a massive long way to not only sorting out the Black Lives Matter issue and making life better for anybody who's underprivileged and is treated badly. And, you know, make no mistake, the UK is full of people that's underprivileged.
Absolutely.
And we might be able to sort out a lot of other issues at the same time. We just need that initial one step forward to create that political earthquake and have enough people behind us within the civ pop, to use a military term, civilian population, to get around it and say, yes, we're with you 110%. Well, 100% would do, actually.
100% enough. I mean, I want to bring John in because John's itching to get in here, but I just want to say, on the point of view of the veterans, you always say it, Simon, and it's so true. When we signed that oath of allegiance, that was not something we did lightly, or I don't believe. Certainly our generation didn't do it lightly, Simon. We believed in what we were doing. We were totally committed to the cause of defending our country. We weren't brainwashed. We were ideologically driven because we knew it was the right thing to do. We were fighting against evil, from the Falklands War, from the Cold War, to Northern Ireland, to the battle against Saddam Hussein. And a lot of people won't thank me for saying that. Saddam Hussein was an evil man, and when he was toppled, the problem was not that we toppled him, but we didn't put something in place to replace him that would have been fair, equitable, and democratic. That was the problem, not getting rid of an evil tyrant. So the campaigns that the British military have been involved in since we were all born have all been just and right campaigns, including the Falklands conflict. But, and I've said this time and time again, the battle is now at home. And it's not a battle against people. It's a battle of ideas. It's a battle about ideology. And I don't know what you think of this, Simon, but I mean, how many veterans do you think we could mobilize to guard these memorials every weekend for a few hours, just to make a stand, to let people know that we will be there at times of our choosing, and we'll stand, whether it's the Cenotaph in Belfast, Bangor where I live, or wherever we decide that we're going to stand, to basically have a presence there on the ground. Do you think that's achievable?
I think it's achievable in that you can veterans will naturally gravitate towards war memorials, statues that give our country or portray our country's history, because people are naturally, I think, patriotic, and they will certainly go and look after memorial statues in their own area. If you were to ask people to travel to protect memorials, I think it's going to be I think you've really got a job on your hands, because although we've got between 4.5, 4.8, depending on where you look, million veterans in the UK, you have to take into account a lot of those are quite elderly. A lot of those are immobile, and a lot of those perhaps were forced into the military at a young age because they couldn't get any other job, and they did 2 or 3 years and then said, right, that's it, I'm off, and have lost interest in the military. But there are still, I would say, as a guess, 2.5 to 3 million veterans that are 100% willing, able to deploy out and do good stuff for the country. And when I say the country, I mean the 4 countries within the United Kingdom. Will you get them all in the same place at the same time? Very unlikely. Could you get a great big number of them supported by like-minded patriots in one place all at the same time? Yeah, I think you could. And it wouldn't take a whole lot of persuasion to do it. It's just you would have to do it, and the people that are the mouthpieces, of which I suppose I'm one, would have to be there on the day. It's no good saying, right, let's all go there, and then you don't turn up yourself, but everyone else does, because you lose credibility. And that has happened on other occasions where you've only had small turnouts. If you get, I hate using the word really, but the leaders out there, other people will feed in. If you've got weak leadership, nobody will turn up. And I suppose it's like that in all walks of life, isn't it? So I don't like to use leadership, because leadership, as far as I'm concerned, as soon as you leave the military and become a veteran, the leadership goes. But you have perhaps lots of different, it's a bit like an orchestra. You have one person going like this, whilst everybody else has got their own little bit of responsibility within that orchestra, and provided that orchestra performs in tune, you can get the desired result you need.
I think that's right, and I think from the point of view of getting that leadership, the leadership's there because I know what you're saying about once you leave the military, the rank doesn't really matter, but there's people who were in the military who had natural leadership skills. Even people without any rank had natural leadership skills, and that was quite obvious. So I think there are those people there, and we need to just say, listen, in your local areas, go out and do it autonomously. Don't tell anyone what you're doing. Just go and do it, because one of the problems is when you start talking about it. The best operations we've done since we've been doing this, since we've been involved in this patriotic movement, and have always been when we've told very few people what we were doing. In fact, the best one I think I've ever done, I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. I just said, right, follow me, chaps, and we all merrily went to Facebook and caused all sorts of havoc. So the reality is, if you don't tell anyone what you're doing, you can achieve it. It's just the people that are coming with you have to have a certain amount of trust, and we'll buy into it. John, what did you?
Toddy's just put up an interesting bit there, saying 4.5 million vets can do some serious damage at a polling station. Yeah, and that's true. Absolutely. And we persuaded a lot of vets to vote for Boris Johnson and the Conservative Party when Boris basically turned round on the morning of the 2nd of July last year and said, if you vote for me and bring me in as leader of the Conservative Party, I will end the persecution and prosecution of the Northern Ireland veterans. And on the back of that, we all trotted off to our polling stations, and he was voted in, which is why I said on Monday he hasn't upheld that. He's hardly seen him this year at all, really. I know he was off sick for a bit, but he's not fulfilling his promises, which is why I said, we can use those same votes to bring him back out again. Because at the end of the day, it's us as Joe Public that we employ the politicians, and there's no reason why, if we put enough pressure on, we couldn't, issue them with their P45s and say, sorry, you're no longer fit for purpose, we're going to employ somebody new. I know it sounds a bit Cromwellian, but
no, it's. I mean,
it's
that
within
is
our constitution to do that.
the reality. Is now what we've got to do. I think this is where we need that political force. I mean, obviously, we nearly had it with UKIP, and I believe absolutely that the deep state deliberately sunk the alliance between UKIP, the football lads, the veterans, and then obviously Tommy came on board as well. And it was so dangerous to the establishment that they absolutely deliberately torpedoed it, put Tommy in prison, sowed division in the ranks of the veterans, in the ranks of the football lads, and also deposed Gerard Batten. I mean, it was actually incredible to see the way the establishment behaved about that, and I believe it was definitely an establishment plot. So what do? I think, and the only show we've got in town at the minute, and I've said this, and John mentioned it earlier on, I want John to come back in because me and you've been doing a lot of the talking, Simon, as we always do, because we're both big mouths. But Anne-Marie Waters has a political party. She is absolutely staunch. She loves this country. She's standing for this country, and she's from Dublin, for goodness sake. She's from Dublin, but she loves Britain more than most British people do, or a lot of British people do. So I think we get behind Anne-Marie Waters. That's my personal opinion. John, what's your thoughts on this situation we're in?
Okay, so I mean, I noticed that someone had put up, I mean, what is the solution? How do we fix this, basically? I'm looking here, so again, this is just another bit of information. It's always good to get information straight from a source. And I'm looking at a website here in America, and it's the nationalgangcenter.gov it comes from. So what they do is, it says here that they're measuring the extent of gang problems, estimated number of gangs in America. Now, I can remember a figure from in and around 1994, because I wrote about this in America, where there was 30,000 gun-related deaths in America back then. And I was actually looking for that figure when I came across this. But it says here that the estimated number of gangs in the United States, now this is only up until 2012, but if you look at it across the years, I mean, it averages out about sort of 30,000, maybe 28,000, just looking across this spectrum of gangs. Then we'll go into the estimated number of distribution of gangs by area. Let me just go on down here a bit. Estimated number of gang members. They say that there's some 800,000 gang members in the United States. Now, you put yourself in a policeman's job in the United States, and I can remember ever since I've been a child, you know, stories of places like Harlem and, you know, the Bronx and places like that. I mean, we all seen the films, you know, where there were no-go zones and people strayed into those areas, and they were robbed and they were stripped of their cars and the wheels off the cars and stuff. But this has been going on for a very, very long time in America. And as I said, 30,000 gun-related deaths in America in 1994, a very, very long time ago. So I wouldn't like to be a policeman policing those areas. You put yourself in the shoes of a policeman that has to go and has to try to apprehend, for whatever reason, and I'm going to say, and this is not being racist, but especially black people, because they are most noted for the veracity in which they do things in their areas. And you put yourself in the shoes of a police officer, and you know how that and it just shows you how that the media in America, how that these people that absolutely hate America, these people that would absolutely destroy America by creating racial tensions. I mean, is it not bad enough that that's the way it is, that there's 800,000 gang members or more by 2019, that there's, you know, 30,000 gangs, and all these people are going to do is they're going to be the biggest recruiting agents for these gangs and these you know, gang warfare in certain areas. So how do we defeat this? Well, we really have to look, who's the real enemy? That's who we have to identify. And the real enemy to me is the activists in the media, is the people within the state. I mean, these, and I'm talking about, let's go to England here right now, and let's not hide anything, because we're not here to sort of gloss over anything. These Labour Party activists, this momentum, and these anarchists. I mean, there's an irony in this anarchy business where they've joined with actual, you know, capitalists, right, to help destroy capitalism. What are they going to get? They're going to get more capitalism. These bunkers, brain dead idiots, because that's exactly what they are. So how do we defeat this? We defeat this by education. Now let me explain to you. In the African community right across the United Kingdom and in Ireland, I've been talking to some of them, and they are being, I mean, again, we live in a goldfish bowl because they are being subjected to exactly the same things as we are within their communities. And what is the real cancer? The cancer is the schooling, which has brought up their young people. And what you'll find is that generally a 20-year-old African thinks that they're being discriminated against, thinks that people are being racist towards them. And little do they know what they are going to create is more racism, real racism, if they don't get a handle of this here. So we have to be the moderate voices. And what we have to do is we have to reach out, like some of your people were saying in the last few days, Richard, we have to reach out into places that are often unpalatable to reach out into. And we have to talk to community leaders. And we have to have people to join us to stand against this media, to absolutely defeat their narrative, and to show everybody that, I mean, look, let's make it worthless for the media to try to create racism. Because, as I say, and I know that if we reach out to the older folk within the African community right now, those older folk think like us. And exactly. I can tell you that for a fact because I have talked to many of them. So how do we defeat this? We defeat this by being bold, by going to places, by asking people, by pushing our noses into places where we otherwise wouldn't push them, and to begin conversations. Just over the last few days, I've been discussing with a conglomerate of an Englishman and a few others, somebody from Zimbabwe, somebody else from Nigeria, and another guy actually from India. But people who have came to this country and they're British to the core. And in fact, I know that these people were at the Winston Churchill Monument on Saturday, and I know that these people were standing alongside veterans in solidarity. So they were. So it's people like that we need, and it's people like that we need to empower in order that they can go toe to toe with this media, in order that they can expose the media whenever the media will be trying to stir up this racial tension. It's the activists in the media that we need to defeat. And I'm only going to mention one name, and I think everybody will get exactly what I'm saying here. John Sweeney. It is those type of people that we need to defeat, and we need to do that with haste.
And we've done it. I mean, look.
A bit of breaking news there, guys. Yep. 4 minutes ago on Bloomberg News and in the Daily Express, Cecil Rhodes statue at the University of Oxford is set to fall as the university bows to left-wing pressure.
Doesn't surprise us.
No, and where will it end? Where will it end? I mean, I think we've got
Boris Johnson was involved in a road traffic accident in Whitehall 4 hours ago as a protester jumped in front of his car.
Oh.
He's all right, but the protester's not.
Oh dear!
Oh, well.
How sad! Oh dear!
Yeah, that's what happens when you jump in front of moving vehicles, isn't it?
Exactly. Splat. So. But I mean, this is the thing. I mean, what John said there is very, very telling, because John Sweeney was. Let's be honest, John Sweeney's career was absolutely destroyed by the Panodrama documentary, which was theatrical genius by Tommy. I mean, whether people, I know not everybody that watches these feeds, Tommy is their cup of tea. He's a mate of mine, so I think what he did there was absolutely genius. And John Sweeney is completely, he's just, honestly, I think he'll be sitting on a park bench soon with his bottle of Buckfast. I mean, that's how bad it's got for John. And
at the end of the day, and this is one of these worrying things for the Parliament again. Like, I've sat and chatted away to Tommy Robinson when I did the EU military unification and PESCO briefings in London in December of 18, and then again in March of 2019 outside the MOD. And, Tommy Robinson is one of those guys. He gets stuff out there. If something needs highlighting, he'll gas it up and get it out there and make sure everybody knows about it. And I think that's absolutely fantastic. Now, the downside of that is, because the government see him as a threat, before he gets a chance to follow up on that, they whisk him away somewhere. And I think that is the exact same thing where all the vets are probably headed at this rate of going. And this is where we need the safety in numbers bit, because If we start gaslighting things the way that we are, and we say, right, this is what we're going to do to lobby the mainstream media and ultimately lobby Parliament and do this and do that and do the other, if you haven't got the numbers, they'll be squirreling us away and putting us on the ghost train for 12 months, moving from prison to prison to prison to prison, and nobody know where we are, in an attempt to break our morale, break us down, so when they do leave, when they do let us out in 12 months' time, we're all quivering wrecks.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
And let's be honest, Simon, we've all been threatened with it. I mean, you know, do you remember I don't know if you remember.
It doesn't really worry me, Richard, and it doesn't worry
me
you.
Neither.
I know
me
it doesn't.
neither.
And to be perfectly honest with you, when they do threaten you with that kind of treatment, and they actually carry it through, like they have with Tommy, they've shot themselves in the foot. Because straight away, even more people find out about what it was. Why has he been locked away? Oh, because he highlighted this, and he highlighted that, and he highlighted that. Oh, I never knew about that, but I do now. So suddenly it grows exponentially, and Tommy is held in higher esteem.
Exactly.
And bloody right too, as far as I'm concerned.
I'm in great danger of being an armchair general here, so I'm being very careful what I say, because I couldn't get to London on Saturday because I'm on Alcatraz at the minute. I know I've got to be very, very careful. However, next time the police threaten to arrest veterans at the Cenotaph, if me and you are there, Simon, let's make a covenant that if we're threatened with arrest just for standing at the Cenotaph, guarding it from thugs, that we will say, well, fine, put the handcuffs on us and arrest us. And whatever you're going to throw at us, throw at us. Because why
it really wouldn't bother me. Really wouldn't bother me.
Me neither. Because I think the reality is that that they're taking absolute liberties, and the veterans are very good. They did the right thing, because what they did de-escalated the situation on Saturday. Yeah. If they'd have been arrested, there would have been a proper riot. If those veterans had been led away, there would have been a proper riot. So they did exactly the right thing. But I think we've got to draw a line in the sand and say, you got away with it this time. You've taken liberties. You've allowed the Cenotaph to be desecrated, which to a veteran is a holy site. You know, imagine if we went to the Dome of the Rock and sprayed something obscene about Muhammad on the side of it. The Muslim world would be in absolute turmoil, right? Yeah. Now, what those people did to the Cenotaph and other war memorials and other statues of generals and so on and so forth is desecration to most veterans. And I think we've got to say, they got away with it this time, but we are not going to stand down next time, and we will do whatever it takes, obviously within the law, to stand there. And if we have to get arrested for standing there, we'll get arrested for standing there. That's.
I remember last year with you, Richard, and somebody coming up to me and saying, "I think you're getting a little bit too radical." And this was outside the Moon pub after the protest. The Moon pub. In bloody Whitehall. And my answer to him was, it's only radical if you're stirring the shit for the sake of stirring the shit. If you're telling the truth and you're standing up for what is right, how is that radical? It's not radical, is it? It's just standing up for what's right, doing the right thing.
Exactly.
Radical is saying, that cash machine's just ripped me off a tenner. I'm going to go inside Branch with my shotgun and ask for it back.
Exactly.
That's radical.
What we've always said, and what we've got to continue to do, is say everything that we're going to do is peaceful and not necessarily within the law, but peaceful, and is not causing harm to anybody else, physical harm to anybody else. Because let's be honest, they've just passed a law that's banned all demonstrations. If you have a demonstration with over 6 people, you're now liable to get arrested. Well, let's see how that one goes when BLM put a few thousand people on the street at the weekend. Let's see how the police react to that one. Because
I've lost out on the bloody context of that new law. Is that new law? Does that only apply in London, or is it everywhere?
I don't know.
Everywhere. Well, it's in Northern Ireland too, so it is. Yeah,
it's in Northern Ireland, so it must be.
Yeah, but I mean, it's time limited. They say it's not going to be forever. Yeah, obviously COVID-19 and so on. Yeah.
But the reality is, John, as you know, that is not about COVID-19. That is about stopping people exercising the right to demonstrate, which is protected under the UN Convention of Human Rights. We have a right of assembly and a right of peaceful protest, and that has been stopped by this junta.
At the end of the day, like, we know they're using psyops. We know now they're using lawfare against us now.
Yep.
By putting a law in to say that you can't gather in groups of more than 6. So we know that they're using the mainstream media to spread fake news and all the rest of it. So we're definitely in a state of hybrid warfare now within the UK. And hybrid warfare, as I was saying earlier, I may as well explain it now for those that don't really understand hybrid warfare. It's quite complicated, so I'll keep it simple if I can. Hybrid warfare was practiced in Syria with a group of people known as the White Helmets. Once they perfected it, it was adopted basically by most countries of the world. Hybrid warfare is there to create civil unrest in a domestic setting. So it's ideal for this. It's made up of 4 main things, which is conventional warfare, which is soldier on soldier with guns. We know what all that's about. But it also includes political warfare, which is changes in policy, that sort of thing, all at the last moment, and perhaps both sides of a government working together but appearing as though they're working separately. You'd have irregular warfare where you would perhaps use soldiers from other countries to do your dirty work, or you bring in mercenary forces or militias and things like that. And you would use cyber warfare. Now, when you've got a combination of those things together, you come up with a thing called kinetic operations. And those kinetic operations, when you link those into fake news from the mainstream media, psychological operations on this is what you mustn't do, this is what you must do, this is what you mustn't do, this is what you must do. And we've had that constantly through the COVID-19 thing. Stay 2 meters apart. Stay at home, protect the NHS, save lives. That's psyops going into you all the time. Stay at home, protect the NHS, save lives. Hear that 1,000 times a day, you dream about it, and eventually you just start doing it automatically. So what does this sort of assist? Well, it brings in deniability. So a government or a succession of governments that want to run hybrid warfare can turn around at the end of the day and say, that wasn't me. I didn't make that policy. It was them. I didn't send those soldiers off. That was a militia that came in from outside and did that. I didn't employ that tactic. That was that guy over there. So it doesn't make a government culpable, and it doesn't sort of force the government into tipping its toe into real warfare and real conflict. It's all done domestically in the civils, and it's the civil population that really become the soldiers, and they're just the tactics are known as the hybrid warfare or the kinetic operations that go on within hybrid warfare. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense, Simon. And the reality is
kind of complicated.
No,
but
it's because the blueprint for that, and we keep coming back to it time and time again, but the blueprint was in Northern Ireland when you had groups like the Force Research Unit recruiting agents and placing agents within paramilitaries on both sides, and then using those paramilitaries to do the state's bidding and bump anybody off that didn't fit the narrative that was going in the direction that the state wanted it to go. And that's exactly what happened in Northern Ireland. It's exactly what happened in Iraq. It's exactly what happened in Syria. It didn't work in Syria because Russia got involved, and basically Russia put a big block in the way of Obama's plans, and they didn't manage to topple Assad as they wanted to. But that's exactly what they did. The reality is, General Mike Flynn, who was basically persecuted and destroyed by the FBI, gave testimony to the fact that Barack Obama trained and armed the groups that eventually became ISIS in Syria. They trained them and they armed them and they let them loose on the civilian population, Shia, Alawites, Christians, and they committed genocide. And that blood is on Obama's hands.
Yeah, so that would be a form of hybrid warfare.
Absolutely.
where he's and back in during the Cold War in the 60s, and of course Vietnam was kicked off, and the Americans were over there because the French had been killed off, etc., etc., etc. They employed hybrid warfare over there because the Russians supported the Viet Cong with weaponry, with money, with tactics, with training, etc., etc., in exchange for whatever they could give them from Vietnam, pharmaceuticals, perhaps. And the Americans, of course, they used the rebels in Laos and in Cambodia to upset the logistic trade routes, etc., of the Viet Cong in exchange for cash dollars, etc. So we know that hybrid warfare has been here for decades, but now it's being employed at home domestically, and the soldiers fighting the hybrid war are the civilians, and they're trying to make it that it's the white civilians fighting the black ones, a black and white war.
Exactly. And that, I mean, that's, because one of the things that they realized they couldn't, Antifa couldn't beat their way out of a paper bag. And now what's happened is Antifa are actually using the black gangs of London as their paramilitary force. That's basically what's happening. And that's what we saw. And if I'll just put the footage, we'll close off here, guys, because obviously we've been going out quite a long time. But I'm going to put this footage up just as we close, and we'll have some closing comments from John and Simon. But I want to show you this footage, guys, because this has not been shown on the mainstream media. And you need to see this. So let me just get this up on screen here, guys. Just bear with me. So we'll go with the first one from outside Downing Street. The week, not this week just gone, but last week. If you haven't seen this, this is okay, did everyone get seeing that? Could you all see that? Okay, everyone saw that. Yeah. Was the volume on that at all? It doesn't really matter if there's volume, but basically what you saw there were people standing at the gates of Downing Street, Black Lives Matter and Antifa standing at the gates of Downing Street, throwing missiles over the perimeter into Downing Street. Now think about this: our veterans were threatened with arrest for peacefully standing at the cenotaph, and you have anarchists and gangs in the centre of London throwing things over. What if there was an Islamist there with a blast bomb that could have thrown it over the fence into the perimeter of Downing Street and maybe blown a couple of police officers up? That's the sort of stuff we're looking at. I want to show you another video here, so just bear with me 2 seconds, guys. Just let me know you can see this on the screen, okay?
Yeah, it's there, mate. It's there, it's down.
See it, okay, guys?
Yeah, I'm here.
losers, all of the drillers, all of them. Expect nothing,
Just while we're looking at that, guys, and again, we can speak over the top of this. That guy that was attacked there was attacked literally, as the other ones were, within feet of police officers. How can that happen? How can people be assaulted within feet of police officers by criminal gangs? I'll keep the video going. Now, I don't know if you've seen the footage of that guy. I'll not put it on here tonight. I mean, YouTube has deleted. I put that video on YouTube two days ago. It had over 5,000 hits, and YouTube deleted the video because they were complaining that that the content was unsuitable, whatever that means. There's far worse content than that on YouTube. But that guy basically was kicked senseless. And if the police hadn't turned up, they talk about this guy that carried the Millwall fan over his shoulder. That guy in that crowd there would have been kicked to death if it wasn't for the police turning up and intervening. And again, why weren't they there sooner? You know, when these white guys were getting picked off on their own, walking home from a demonstration, and that could have been any one of us on this feed and any one of us watching this feed, because we've all gone to those demonstrations. Now, why did that happen? And at the end of the day, the people who are ultimately responsible are the people that attacked those individuals. But that happened because of the mainstream media, because of lies that were told about who was at the demonstration. People were saying that the EDL was at that demonstration. I know the leaders of the EDL personally, and they assure me that the EDL ceased to exist in any way, shape and form in 2014. It hasn't been a force since 2014. It doesn't exist. So why were the mainstream media and sadly some veterans and others saying that the EDL were at that demonstration? And that's why those people were attacked, because everybody at that demonstration was associated with the so-called far right. And incidentally, the EDL weren't far right either. If you look at what they stood for, they were very, very liberal and centrist. So this is the point, that the disinformation goes so deep that those communities that came out on Saturday actually thought that their community was under attack. And that, I'm not excusing it, but that's why they attacked. And it's exactly the same as why the football lads charged the lines on Saturday. I'm not excusing it, but that's why they did what they did. And we haven't even had time to go into the fact that there were undercover police officers. We've got eyewitness accounts that there were undercover police officers on the ground on Saturday, and goodness knows what they were doing and what trouble they were causing. Anyway, John, closing comments.
Yeah, looking at the whole thing, I mean, it's such a mess. But again, we can't stress enough that really what we need to do is we need to try and calm it. I mean, it's in nobody's interest that a race war occurs. And as I say, we have to identify who the real enemies are. And believe me, the real enemies are, as I say, the activists in the media. And look, let's take this at face value. We know that there's psyops. We know that there's things going on. We know that there's stirring up that's occurring. But we have to really say, why is our government permitting this to happen? You know, why are these people, I mean, are they frightened of this globalization? Are they frightened of an uprising? You know, the black community and all these anarchists and whatnot getting together and causing havoc throughout the country. I mean, I just don't know what is in their minds whenever they're not speaking out against it and not calling it for exactly what it is, because it will be worse. It will. I mean, Britain will be a worse place. The United Kingdom will be a worse place if this is permitted to fester. So, look, I mean, everybody, and this is to the people on the feed also, where you can, be bold, get up. Go and speak to people within other communities. Go and speak to people, older people, because I can tell you firsthand, I've spoke to many people over the last number of days, and the older folk are exactly the same as us. And within the black communities, the younger folk have been indoctrinated through the universities and through the schools, and they all believe in this utopian dream where they think that togetherness is going to be created by forcing people apart. And well, what doesn't take a rocket scientist to tell you that that's not going to happen whenever people are being pitted against people. So we've got to continue to push on. We've got to do so even in the face of much provocation. And as I say, look, never stop trying. Continue to push out and do what we have to do.
Brilliant, John. Simon, closing thoughts from you?
Yeah, I agree with everything that John said there. You
Me
know,
too.
we can't be seen to be gaslighting anything even more than it's already fired up. You know, if we can do anything at all, the only way to sort this out is politically, unfortunately. You know, and we've got to become a giant force, but a giant force that is going to change the way that the mainstream media narrative actually works and operates, and how that connects to the parliament as is. And the one thing that's sort of really at the back of my mind is when you've got people like the government as is. Now the government is basically made up of what, the 650 people in the House of Commons, and you can't tell me that none of them are speaking out against this. So, are they just puppets and somebody else is pulling the strings? If somebody else is pulling the strings, we need to know who is pulling the strings, and we want to know why they're pulling the strings and what they hope to gain from it. Because as John said there, all they're doing is creating so much disruption, so much tension, and that's eventually going to turn into all-out hate between people of different colours, which is something that right at the start of the show, Martin Luther King went a long way to eradicate in the 60s before his assassination. And it would be such a shame for it to all go back to that. You know, we all grew up in the 70s when we knew that things were a little bit racist then. And we've managed to drag ourselves out of that sort of 40, 50 years down the line and got things on an even keel where you can walk down the road, you don't even notice the person's colour. You know, it's not an issue at all. You know, it's just, there's more of an issue going on, I think, with, and I hate to say it, and it sounds racist, but I don't mean it in a racist way, but people are more focused on now, oh, where's he from? Is he Polish? Oh, where's he from? Is he from Romania? Oh, you know, is that an Albanian I can hear? They're more focused on those sort of issues than they are colour. And I would like to see all the issues gone. You know, if you come to the country, you're willing to keep your head down and you work hard and you put as much back into the country as you take out of it, you get my vote. Simple as that. And I really don't care what colour you are or what language your native tongue is. And that, in a nutshell, really, I suppose, is my angle on life in general.
Well, I agree with that 100%, Simon. I mean, I was brought up literally. I mean, I think our generation were brought up to be colorblind. And I spoke to black lads about this over the last week or so, because I honestly, it shocked me so much, because I just do not think the UK is a racist country, and I'm absolutely rocked to the core by this. I'll be honest with you. That's why I keep doing videos about it, because I do not believe there's a problem with racism in the United Kingdom. Now, if people in there, I don't even like talking about the black community, because I genuinely was brought up not to look at skin color. I was brought up to look at what people did and what they thought and what they believed. And that's why, again, as everyone knows, I'm very strong on Islam, because I believe it's a dangerous ideology. But I also believe that Marxism is a dangerous ideology. I believe that fascism is a dangerous ideology. I believe that globalism is a dangerous ideology. And our ideology is patriotism. That's our ideology. We love our country. We love the United Kingdom. And I keep going back to those principles: freedom, equality, democracy, and sovereignty. That's what we can all agree on. We can all get round those. And if you get round those, it doesn't matter where, it doesn't matter if you've just come in from Nigeria. If you can say that you want Britain to be a free, an equitable, democratic and sovereign nation, then you know, you can get on in the country and you can do extremely well. Whereas if you're some white scummy little anarchist who's got middle-class parents and were brought up in a nice leafy suburb, and you want to destroy the country because you've bought into this crazy ideology, well, go and live somewhere else in a completely different country, because we don't want you here if you want to destroy the country. So I just hope that we can get the genie back in the bottle, and I believe we can, because I think there's people of goodwill on all sides. And I know Glenn Saffer's reaching out to people. I'm reaching out to people. I know Tommy's been reaching out to people. I know the football lads have been reaching out to people. You know, I'm sure the veterans community will reach out to people, because dialogue is far better than walking behind coffins. And, you know, all three of us here have walked behind coffins of friends and loved ones because of conflict. And none of us want to see that in the United Kingdom. So, you know, yes, we all I get fired up, I get angry about things, but what I want is a peaceful solution to this. I want dialogue with all communities. And I want to encourage people to integrate into the United Kingdom. I'm not into this ethno-nationalism. I think that's just as dangerous as the Black Lives Matter movement. I'm totally against groups like Patriotic Alternative, and I'll say that openly, because we've got to be consistent in what we say. So to me, we are the center ground, and but what we need to hear, this is, and I'll say this again, if there's any people from the Black community watching these videos, please, if you agree with what we're saying tonight, please get in touch with us, and please speak out vocally against these groups that are racist, Marxist, revolutionary groups that are going to bring chaos and discord wherever they organize. Guys, thanks very much. Thanks everyone for watching. We again, good viewing figures tonight, right the way through. Please like and share this video. Obviously, you know, follow John. John's got a YouTube channel, Forgotten Voices, I think it is. Simon's got Maverick Veteran. Follow these guys, get their views up as well, because we need to share this message of who was actually out on Saturday. The media slandered people, and it could have cost people their lives. That slander is going to cost people their lives. And it's exactly the same as what's happening with Black Lives Matter. When people are slandering us and saying we're something we're not, it's extremely dangerous. And people are doing the opposite with Black Lives Matter. You would think, honestly, they'd all just come down from heaven and they were little cherubs and angels. It's a complete nonsense. Guys, thanks very much for watching. Simon, John, thank you very much. Let's do.
Can I just take, just a moment out just to thank everybody that is viewing, and thank them for all the the very kind messages that they've been putting out. I'd love to be able to reply. I've got itchy fingers. I want to reply, but you can't, can you?
No.
No. But thank you so much for all the kind messages that you've sent in to us. Yeah. Thank you. And stay safe and stay well. Remember your 2 meter distancing.
Social distancing. My goodness.
Absolutely.
Do you know something? Do you know what the problem is? If everybody just went to the pub, there wouldn't be any problems. We all just need to go to the pub. We just need a nice pint of Stella.
I'm just going to tell a joke to finish. Right, everybody ready for a joke? Now, this will make everybody laugh. Oh, it's a good one. So we've all seen the Black Lives Matter rallies right around the UK, where they could do whatever they want, albeit no social distancing or anything required. We talked about the 6-man social distance and the 6-man gatherings out in public. And in Northern Ireland, just last week, a local Orange Order fraternity, they put into the Parades Commission, and they asked for a social distancing. They asked could they have a social distancing march, 6 people walking down a street on the 13th of July, and they were turned down. Actually, they were turned down by a Parades Commission. Imagine that. So there you go. These 6-man's gatherings, even if you stick to the rules, if you're patriotically proud of who you are, if you're British to the core, well, it'll not be permitted.
It's incredible, isn't it?
There you go. Join Black Lives Matter and do the
do. You can do what you want. That's exactly it. Yeah. Well, hopefully we haven't been. Hopefully we haven't been a recruiting sergeant. And like I say, we're totally against prejudice of any type. And look, the bottom line is all of us have prejudices, every single one of us, and that's something we've got to work out in our own lives. but the problems that we've got in the country are being so overblown and over-egged by the media. Smash the mainstream media, get watching alternative media, you know, citizen journalism and people just talking about things like we're talking tonight. And we've got a chance of winning this. We've got to turn this around, and we've got to get power. We've got to get power in this country, and we can only do it through the ballot box. Again, thank you for watching. See you all soon, and just stay safe. See you soon.
Thank you.
Take care.